share this talk. Thanks for giving me the opportunity for sharing this presentation that I did at Open Repositories this June. As we start, I'd like to share that at the University of Virginia Library in Charlottesville, we acknowledge that the land where we learn and work is the ancestral homeland and traditional territory of the Monacan Indian Nation. We pay respect to their elders and knowledge keepers, past and present. We acknowledge and pay respect to the enslaved Africans, enslaved laborers, and free Black laborers who built UVA, as well as their descendants. Today, we acknowledge the land, we acknowledge labor, traditions, and knowledge, and we acknowledge lives. While I work at the University of Virginia, my topic is a remote campus of UVA located in Wise, Virginia, deep in the central Appalachian Mountains. We're going to focus on the disproportionate impact of problems on that region, discuss UVA-Wise research and programs focused on solving regional problems, and our two campuses working in concert to make that research publicly available. Then we will wrap with a call to action. So this is a blurry view of the campus at UVA-Wise. In 1954, UVA was engaged to establish a higher education in Southwest Virginia. Clinch Valley College of UVA was founded as the only public college in that central Appalachian region. It was located on a farm with 2 buildings and served 109 students, mostly veterans. The Appalachian economy centered on coal mining and tobacco, and I would add manufacturing. Today, UVA-Wise has 26 buildings on 346 acres and serves 2,100 students. Over 50% of the students are first generation for the local region, and over 80% receive some form of financial aid. There is bipartisan support to expand UVA-Wise's research capacity. The local area's economy's strongest component is healthcare and social assistance today. And I want you to remember that because it's going to be important later. Appalachia is beautiful with layers of mountains and areas in the Piedmont. The region we call Central is the portion here shown in red on this map. Wise is in the tip of Virginia across the Eastern Continental Divide, which is another way of saying isolated and deep in the mountains. Appalachia can be defined as a unique place and people with a rich history and heritage influencing its music, dance, food, crafts, and art. Its food culture goes beyond cuisine. It is about community, generosity, caregiving, celebration, and grieving. Another important aspect is the shared values of community, self-reliance, and respect for the land. The physiographic region of Central Appalachia is among the richest in plant, animal, and aquatic biodiversity in the world. One prime example of critical research based on the region's animal biodiversity concerns the variety of salamanders in Appalachia. According to the Smithsonian, 550 species of salamanders have been identified worldwide, with the richest diversity, 77 species found in Appalachia. The mountains naturally provide water filtration, and the forests carbon sequestration. In 1965, the economy revolved around agriculture, mining, logging, textiles, furniture, and other types of manufacturing. Due to several complex factors and their disproportionate impact on the region, the economy today is less dependent on employment from resource extractive sectors and more dependent on the service sectors. Complex factors such as the decline in coal mining, the decline in manufacturing, the opioid crisis, and the pandemic has contributed to the transition of the economy and the disproportionate impact to this region has led to what is called the epidemic of despair. Looking at roughly the first 2 decades of this century, the chart illustrates the disparity of impact. Employment growth in Appalachia is 1%, whereas the growth outside Appalachia is 12%. The decline in coal production in the region was 62%, compared with 38% outside Appalachia, and drove 10 to 14% increase in unemployment. Death due to the opioid crisis was 42% compared to 32%, but for ages 25 to 54, the mortality rate was 72% higher than outside Appalachia. The pandemic further increased mortality by 36%. And finally, global warming is contributing to catastrophic flooding and decreasing wetland habitats. Mountaintop removal or surface mining required fewer miners and sent toxic dust over communities. This man, shown here, is Ed Wiley, a former strip miner whose granddaughter Kayla became sick while attending an elementary school located in the shadow of a mountaintop removal site. Wiley became an activist, walking 455 miles to the nation's capital to inform his senator of the health impacts of mountaintop removal coal mining. In the lower right, the map illustrates a correlation between surface mining and poverty in central Appalachia. And an interesting note is that Ed was able to raise enough money to provide a new school for the area due to his activism. The U.S. Center for Disease Control published that an average of 22% of annual deaths due to opioids occurs in Appalachia. In 2022, while driving from Wise, Virginia to Western North Carolina, where my family resides, I saw 2 kinds of billboard advertisements in those rural areas. One advertised opioid recovery assistance. The other stressed the critical importance of feeding infants sufficiently. I have to say it was the most depressing ride through a beautiful area that I've ever experienced. In analyzing the impact of COVID-19, many small businesses closed temporarily, some never to reopen. It was reported that Central Appalachia earned, on average, 40% less than the rest of the U.S. Pre-existing disease amplified risk of death. Healthcare was understaffed and delayed. A service-oriented economy requires frontline staffing. In the pandemic, people working the front lines experienced a higher rate of infection and death. All of these factors increased anxiety, fear, and depression. Because of the mountainous terrain, the risk of flooding in this region is higher. Global warming has contributed to severe flooding, causing further loss of jobs, lives, and homes. So back to UVA-WISE. UVA-WISE is uniquely positioned for research to have a positive impact on the region. The campus is situated on mixed-use land containing unmined forest, recently mined forest, reclaimed following federal guidelines, and older surface mining sites established before current federal reclamation guidelines and where hardwood forests have since recovered. Dr. Walter Smith came to UVA-WISE because he believed he could apply his research and teaching to make a difference in the region. The campus is close to where the students live and uses a significant percentage of the budget to afford students financial aid. The institution also partners with the community to rebuild the economy. Dr. Smith described one research project conducted with a local landowner to restore a section of river that was severely degraded during the construction of a heavily trafficked interstate, I-81, and unsustainable farming practices. The research and work was funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The photos illustrate the erosion, which destroyed aquatic habitat and pasture land. The project restored the aquatic habitat for the hellbender salamander, stabilize the riverbanks, and stop the erosion of pasture land. Salamanders are very sensitive to water pollution and therefore play a very important role for research. Another project involved observing the environment, behavior, and health of salamanders in different habitats, land across all the mixed use cases, and water. This research was critical in helping researchers to better understand two major threats to the region's ecosystem: the increase of salinity in water due to mining, construction, and sewage, and second, how global warming was shrinking the wet habitats. This last example of research is a grant-funded project to establish secure cyber infrastructure to broaden access to sensitive data. This is critical for collaboration across the region, not only for healthcare, but also the sciences and engineering. UVA-WISE has a three-pronged approach for economic engagement, community development, entrepreneurship, professional workforce and career development, and health and prosperity. Each program is designed around rebuilding the area's economy in a sustainable way. One of the challenges for UVA-WISE is a lack of resources, in some cases to take advantage of grant funding, and in most cases to make this research visible. The U.S. Office of Science and Technology Policy is mandating that all publicly funded research be made publicly accessible by year-end 2025. UVA is partnering with UVA-WISE to solve this problem. In phase 1, UVA's institutional repository is open for ingesting UVA-WISE research. This supports meeting the 2025 mandate. The second project, which I will call phase 2, is more about showcasing this research. We want to build UVA-WISE a branded portal, which will give access to the research, offer tools and information for researchers, and market the undergraduate research opportunities. In UVA's repository, UVA-WISE is a collection. Their own portal better showcases the research. We also intend to establish a scholarly communication service program within the UVA-WISE library, staffed with UVA-WISE students. An annual event will be marketed to all WISE students, but will be used to showcase current research work of faculty and students. Surveys will be used before and after to gauge students' interest in and knowledge of UVA-WISE research, services, and opportunities. We made a final round for funding in the spring, but were not selected in the final round. I'm currently seeking funding from a foundation focused on Central Appalachia, and that's due in August. So the challenge: do you know of areas that are disproportionately impacted? Institutions conducting research and offering programs of greater value to the whole, but lacking infrastructure? Don't we, as larger, well-resourced institutions, have a responsibility to support these institutions that are positioned much better to have a positive impact in those regions? You know, for me, this has never been about the technology. You know, I've worked in IT for my entire career. I'm not motivated by technology. I'm motivated by the cause. I posit that we value the work to build repositories and tools because we believe it will have a positive impact in the world. And here's some references for some of the research and statistics. And I hope this can provide a platform for us to discuss opportunities. Thank you.